Introduction and Thesis. The Sand Creek Massacre, November 29, 1864, remains one of the most egregious acts of violence in American history, an unprovoked attack by the Colorado Volunteer Cavalry led by Colonel John Chivington against a peaceful camp of Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho people. It is frequently cited as one of the foulest and most unjustifiable crimes in the annals of America. This research aims to prove that the massacre was not a spontaneous outburst, but the culmination of a systematic policy of land greed, treaty violation, and racial extermination driven by the aggressive expansionist goals of the U.S. federal government and the territorial leadership of Colorado. The central thesis of this study is, the Sand Creek Massacre was the direct, predictable outcome of the betrayal inherent in American westward expansion, where the military was strategically deployed to clear the land of indigenous populations whose rights had been legally yet cynically extinguished by broken treaties. 1.2. Indigenous peoples of the Great Plains and their territory. Before the massive influx of white settlers, the Southern Cheyenne and Arapaho dominated the central and southern Great Plains. Their cultures were deeply intertwined with the bison, which provided the necessities of life: food, shelter, teepees made of hides, and clothing. The Cheyenne. Organized into bands, the Cheyenne possessed sophisticated political and spiritual structures, including the Council of 44 Chiefs and warrior societies like the Dog Soldiers. Their territories stretched across parts of modern-day Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, and Wyoming. The Arapaho. Often allied with the Cheyenne, they shared many cultural practices and were primarily nomadic hunters. The sovereignty and sustainability of these cultures depended entirely on the vast, uninterrupted plains. The arrival of settlers drastically altered the ecological balance, creating immediate grounds for conflict. 1.3. The Seeds of Tragedy, Treaties and their Betrayal. The American government's primary method for dealing with indigenous nations was through treaties, most of which were designed to be broken once they became inconvenient to white expansion. The First Treaty of Fort Lyon, 1851. This seminal agreement formally recognized and guaranteed vast, legally defined territories for the Plains tribes, including the Cheyenne and Arapaho. Crucially, this treaty acknowledged the tribes' inherent sovereignty over their lands. The Pikes Peak Gold Rush, 1858–1859. The discovery of gold in the area that would become Denver led to an uncontrollable rush of white miners and settlers directly into the protected 1851 treaty lands. The U.S. government failed to enforce the treaty boundaries, signaling to the tribes that their land rights were expendable. The Treaty of Fort Wise, 1861. Pressured by the territorial government and military presence, a few Cheyenne and Arapaho chiefs were coerced into signing the Treaty of Fort Wise. This document drastically reduced their reservation lands to a tiny, arid tract along Sand Creek and the Arkansas River, less than 1/30th of the 1851 territory. Most tribal leaders and bands, including the powerful Dog Soldiers, rejected this treaty, calling the signatories unrepresentative. This established the legal pretext for the subsequent massacres. While the U.S. government considered any Native American outside this small reservation to be hostile, the majority of the tribes considered the 1861 treaty illegitimate. 1.4. Western migration, resource depletion, and rising conflict. The relentless wave of white migration exacerbated the conflict, transforming a territorial dispute into a matter of survival for the tribes. The lure of gold and land. The economic drive of the settlers clashed directly with the indigenous way of life. The settlers viewed the land only as a resource to be exploited, fueling a racist ideology that categorized Native Americans as an impediment to progress. The destruction of the bison. Mass hunting of the bison by white settlers, travelers, and railroad companies destroyed the economic base of the Plains tribes. This deliberate or careless resource depletion was an act of war by starvation, forcing indigenous groups to resort to raids for survival, which in turn justified further military action against them. 1.5. The political climate, Colorado Territory, and the Civil War. The context of the American Civil War was pivotal, as it placed responsibility for border defense in the hands of territorial leaders and unreliable volunteer militias, setting the stage for disaster. The role of volunteer militias. With most experienced U.S. regular Army troops fighting in the East, the defense of Colorado Territory fell to the Colorado Volunteers. These units were often poorly disciplined and deeply hostile toward Native Americans. Governor John Evans' policy. Governor John Evans was an ardent proponent of removing or eliminating the tribes to secure the territory for white settlement. He actively sought to provoke a war to justify military action. Chivington's ascendancy. Colonel John Chivington, a former Methodist preacher, commanded the Colorado Volunteers. He held an extremist view that Indians ought to be killed and was eager to achieve military glory. His personal ambition and racist zeal found fertile ground in the xenophobic environment of the territory. The Hostile Declaration, summer 1864. Using several minor raids as justification, Governor Evans issued a controversial proclamation in August 1864, essentially stating that all friendly Indians must report to designated military posts or be hunted as hostiles. This effectively branded anyone not under military custody, even those attempting to be peaceful, like Black Kettle's band, as targets for military action, granting Chivington the operational authority he desired.
Escalating tensions and failed peace efforts, mid to late 1864. Summer of violence. Following Governor Evans's hostile proclamation, several skirmishes occurred along the Platte River and Arkansas River, increasing paranoia among white settlers and leading to heavier-handed military responses. Black Kettle's determination. Despite the escalating violence, the prominent Southern Cheyenne chief Black Kettle remained committed to peace. He actively sought contact with U.S. military authorities to secure safety for his band, which was committed to non-hostility. The Camp Weld Council, September 1864. Black Kettle and other chiefs met with Governor Evans and Colonel Chivington at Camp Weld. Black Kettle offered to bring his people closer to Fort Lyon under military protection. Evans and Chivington's response was ambiguous, essentially placing the blame on the chiefs and stating that peace was only possible through complete submission to the military. Analysis focus. Though Black Kettle believed he had secured a commitment to peace, Chivington's public statement at Camp Weld, "The war is on and you are in it," was a strategic deception. 2.2. The changing command at Fort Lyon. Major Wynkoop's empathy. Major Edward Wynkoop, the commander of Fort Lyon, initially met with Black Kettle and convinced him to bring his band near the fort, assuring them of safety under the American flag. Wynkoop's belief was that the conflict could be resolved peacefully. The dismissal. Colonel Chivington, viewing Wynkoop's actions as coddling savages and obstructing his ambition for military glory, engineered Wynkoop's removal from command. Major Anthony's role. Wynkoop was replaced by Major Scott Anthony, who, while initially maintaining the peace commitment, eventually allowed himself to be influenced by Chivington's aggressive agenda. Anthony later instructed Black Kettle's band to move to the Sand Creek location, about 40 miles northeast of the fort, and hunt for survival, reaffirming their protected status. 2.3. The Sand Creek encampment, November 1864. Location and trust. Black Kettle's village of approximately 700 Cheyenne and Arapaho people settled near Sand Creek. They were secure in the belief that they were under the protection of the U.S. Army, having fulfilled all conditions for non-hostility. Symbols of peace. The camp prominently displayed two flags. A large American flag, a gift from an earlier peace commissioner, flying from a lodgepole. A small white flag of truce positioned below it. Analysis focus. These flags serve as definitive proof that the people in the camp considered themselves allies or, at the very least, non-combatants seeking protection. Vulnerability. The camp was composed mostly of elderly people, women, and children, as most of the men, warriors and hunters, were away hunting for supplies or traveling. This rendered the village almost entirely defenseless. 2.4. The attack. November 29, 1864. Chivington's march. On November 28, 1864, Colonel Chivington led approximately 700 troops of the 1st and 3rd Colorado Cavalry from Fort Lyon toward Sand Creek, having strictly concealed his movements from all but his most trusted subordinates. The surprise assault. At dawn on November 29, Chivington's cavalry surrounded the unsuspecting encampment. The element of surprise was complete. Ignoring the flags. Despite the clear presence of the American and white flags and the sight of women and children, Chivington gave the direct order to attack. Chaos and retreat. As the firing began, chaos erupted. Black Kettle attempted to rally his people, shouting assurances that the troops were friendly, even holding his American flag aloft until he was fired upon. Many villagers attempted to flee into the Sand Creek bed for cover. 2.5. The brutality and atrocity. The massacre, not a battle. The event quickly devolved from an attack into a massacre. The Colorado volunteers, many drunk and eager for glory, showed no mercy. The official death toll is approximately 150 to 200 Native Americans, with 2/3 being women and children. Eyewitness accounts of atrocities. Subsequent government investigations gathered horrific testimony from soldiers like Lieutenant Joseph Kramer and Captain Silas Soule, who refused to participate. They described the deliberate shooting of women and infants, the mutilation and dismemberment of the dead and dying, the taking of scalps and body parts as war trophies, which soldiers later displayed in Denver saloons. Chivington's justification. Chivington infamously reported a decisive victory and claimed the dead were hostile warriors. However, the evidence from the scene, including the destruction of lodges, the number of women and children killed, and the subsequent mutilations, proved it was a deliberate, unprovoked massacre of non-combatants.
Initial public opinion and propaganda. Triumphalism in Denver. Colonel Chivington and his men returned to Denver hailed as heroes. They publicly displayed the scalps and mutilated body parts they had taken as trophies in local theaters and saloons. The local press celebrated the glorious victory over the savage Indians. The narrative of necessity. The dominant narrative pushed by Governor Evans and Chivington was that Sand Creek was a necessary military action against a hostile, well-armed enemy that posed a threat to the settlers. Chivington claimed his men had saved Colorado. Early dissent. Almost immediately, cracks appeared in this narrative. Soldiers who had refused to participate in the slaughter, notably Captain Silas Soule and Lieutenant Joseph Kramer, sent private letters and official reports detailing the atrocities, flatly contradicting Chivington's version of events. 3.2. Dissent from within. Major Edward Wynkoop and the protesters. Wynkoop's indictment. Major Edward Wynkoop, who had been removed from command at Fort Lyon, was outraged upon learning the truth. He conducted his own initial informal investigation, interviewing soldiers and survivors. Official report. Wynkoop wrote a scathing official report to his superiors condemning Chivington's actions as an unjustifiable and diabolical murder, and arguing that the attack was a betrayal of trust. Captain Soule's testimony and assassination. Captain Silas Soule, who commanded Company D and openly refused to fire on the camp, provided critical testimony to the subsequent military investigations. Tragically, Soule was assassinated in Denver in April 1865, widely believed to be a direct result of his willingness to testify against Chivington. Analysis focus. Soule's death highlights the powerful political forces in Colorado dedicated to suppressing the truth and protecting Chivington. 3.3. The Congressional Investigation, Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War. The scope. Due to the horrific nature of the reports, the U.S. Congress launched a thorough investigation through the powerful Joint Committee on the Conduct of the War. key findings. The committee gathered extensive eyewitness testimony from soldiers and civilians. Their report was uncompromising, concluding that the massacre was a foul and dastardly outrage that would disgrace the veriest savage. Condemnation. The committee strongly condemned Colonel Chivington and Governor Evans, stating that the attack was without parallel in the records of the Indian Wars. This report was crucial in shaping the long-term historical view of the event. 3.4. The military investigation. Judge Advocate General. Focus on military justice. The military inquiry, overseen by the Judge Advocate General, focused on whether Chivington had violated the Articles of War and committed an offense worthy of court-martial. The legal loophole. Despite overwhelming evidence of murder and brutality, Chivington had resigned from the Army upon the expiration of his volunteer term in early 1865. According to prevailing military law, he could not be court-martialed as a civilian. Analysis focus. This inability to prosecute Chivington legally underscores the failure of the military justice system to hold officers accountable for atrocities committed during the heat of war and expansion. 3.5. Tribal retaliation and subsequent warfare. The plains ablaze. Sand Creek fundamentally destroyed any remaining trust between the Plains tribes and the U.S. government. The survivors and related bands, especially the Dog Soldiers, were galvanized by fury and a thirst for vengeance. The Winter War of 1864 to 1865. The Cheyenne and Arapaho launched devastating retaliatory raids against stage stations and settlements along the Platte River and the Santa Fe Trail. Long-term impact. The massacre, intended by Chivington to end the Indian threat, ironically ensured a long and bloody period of warfare across the plains for the next decade, accelerating the need for further military campaigns like those by General Sheridan. The failure of justice. Chivington's post-war life. No criminal charges. Despite the 3 separate investigations, Congressional, military, and Judge Advocate General, all strongly condemning the attack, John Chivington was never criminally prosecuted. His resignation from the military, due to the end of his volunteer commission, protected him from a court-martial. Reputation tarnished. Although he avoided legal penalty, the investigations effectively destroyed Chivington's political ambitions. He was forced to move several times and lived out his life in relative obscurity, his involvement in the massacre ensuring his infamy. The system's acquittal. The failure to try Chivington highlights a significant systemic flaw. The American political and military establishment, despite acknowledging the crime, ultimately allowed the perpetrators of atrocities against Native Americans to escape punishment. 4.2. Long-term impacts on the Cheyenne and Arapaho peoples. Exile and reservation. The massacre shattered the political unity and cultural integrity of the Cheyenne and Arapaho. Black Kettle's band eventually accepted peace terms and relocation, leading to their forced removal to reservations in Indian Territory, Oklahoma. The continuing cycle of violence. Black Kettle, still seeking peace, was killed 4 years later in the Washita Massacre, 1868, by the U.S. 7th Cavalry under George Custer. This confirmed the grim reality that the promises of safety from the U.S. government were entirely unreliable. Cultural disruption. The loss of tribal leaders, traditional lands, and the constant threat of military violence led to the breakdown of traditional Cheyenne and Arapaho society, accelerating their assimilation into the reservation system. 4.3. Historical memory and memorialization. Decades of silence. For many years, the Sand Creek Massacre was either ignored in mainstream American history or dismissed as an unfortunate but necessary action of the Indian Wars. The Sand Creek Massacre National Historic Site. The establishment of the site in Kiowa County, Colorado, and dedicated in 2007, represents a crucial step in the U.S. government's and the nation's formal acknowledgement of the event as an act of calculated violence against non-combatants.
Analysis focus. The site's creation serves as a form of transitional justice, a public admission of truth and guilt, even though restorative justice, land or monetary reparations, remains complex and incomplete. Modern interpretation and education. Sand Creek is now widely taught as a key example of state-sponsored domestic terrorism and human rights abuses against indigenous populations, forcing Americans to confront the dark side of manifest destiny. 4.4. Conclusion: Ethical classification and legacy. War crime or genocide. Modern scholars and human rights advocates frequently debate the appropriate classification of the Sand Creek Massacre. War crime. Given the attack on non-combatants who were flying flags of truce or surrender, it clearly violates established laws of war, even though loosely defined in 1864. Genocide. Given the explicit statements by leaders like Chivington and Evans about the need to kill and destroy them all, and the deliberate targeting of women and children, many argue the intent was to systematically eliminate the Cheyenne and Arapaho peoples from the territory, aligning with the definition of genocide as per the UN Convention. Final synthesis, reiterating the thesis. The Sand Creek Massacre stands as a powerful symbol of the American government's policy of dispossession and ethnic cleansing. It was the moment when the military, acting with political approval, abandoned all pretense of negotiation and chose systematic violence as the final solution.